So I refer to it as a spreadsheet. It came from the spreadsheet, but it's in there as a PDF file. But we're going to talk about energy performance. But this is also, if you want to think about starting a checklist for auditing 50001, this is a great place to start. Because what I want to use this bottom row right here is energy performance, and these are all the sections of the standard by number that have a reference to energy performance. So we use this to illustrate how pervasive energy performance is mentioned in 50001. It is a standard that was written with improving energy performance in mind. But if you wanted to think about auditing the significant energy uses, where in the standard do I need to be concerned with looking at requirements? Then we have all those identified, or the energy policy. And I want to audit energy policy now. I know which items to look at to build my checklist. These are the requirements I have to have. So it's a handy tool. It's in your resources folder. Please take it and use it. So energy performance.
So can these materials be distributed?
Do what?
Can this be distributed?
Can you give it to one of your clients? Is that what you're saying? Yes, sure. Now, we would probably say something if you gave it to your clients and say, look, I developed this really nice occurrence index that I want to share with you.
Make sure how to judge it.
Holly came up with that. You didn't get to meet her this week, but we mentioned her several times.
Is she not here today? I was hoping I could meet her before I left.
I don't think she's in the
actually
office.
in Pennsylvania.
Do what?
She's in Pennsylvania.
Okay. So how do we evaluate energy performance? SCP makes it very straightforward and simple for us, right? We have an MDB protocol. It's a top-down specific prescription. We looked at that on the second day. Here's what you have to do to generate that number in the regression tool. There's a bottom-up sanity check that validates that. Great. It is a really good, it's clear, well-defined description of energy performance. But 50001 mentions it dozens of times. And how does that get considered and included in the audit? So we want to look at what that means for 50001. And then what does it mean to evaluate that in light of it? So we're going to go through just quickly what it means to define energy performance, how we will consider it, and then how we look at it. We're going to start this section by reminding you what we talked about in the last section, which is a nonconformity is a non-fulfillment of a requirement. If energy performance is required in 50001, then do we have a nonconformity if they have not achieved an improvement in energy performance? How do you write that? How do you find that? What does that do? So in looking at nonconformities, we're really wanting to qualify 4 different things from an energy management perspective. And I might leave these 3 up here to start because in any management system, the audit is to check for intent, implementation, and effectiveness. So if someone fails to meet the requirements of the standard, then they didn't really intend to have a conformant management system. If in implementing this standard, they failed to have, or they failed to follow through on what they implemented, then they have, failure in implementation. But you can do all of that, but not do the diligence on the checking and acting side and have an ineffective management system. So Audits aren't just about, can I check the box, I've seen it, yeah, they have it in place. The auditor's really thinking about how these are embedded in having an effective system that drives the management of energy and energy performance improvement. But we have this fourth concept introduced in 50,001. Those first three really apply whether the management system is about quality or environmental or what it is, but we are required to demonstrate some level of improvement in energy performance. So if I have an effective management system, it should be attaining these results. That's basically what we're trying to say. Any deficiency in that, then really we have a non-conformity. So if you look at 50,001, in the introduction, you'll see this paragraph. The purpose of this international standard is to enable organizations to establish the systems and processes necessary to improve the energy performance, including energy efficiency, use, and consumption. So the very intention of the standard right up front is that energy performance improvement, that the energy performance improved. Under the general requirements, it says that the organization shall determine how it will meet the requirements of the standard, of this international standard, in order to achieve continual improvement of its energy performance and its energy management system. So we're not left with much option. We can't really squirm around and say, and there were some heated arguments when it was first published, well, it really doesn't say you have to improve energy performance. We would take issue with that statement. It does say
fixed it for the
that
next
you
one.
have to do what?
Fix that for the next one.
Yeah.
Now it says it 3 times.
Bold print.
Yes.
And in the U.S., it's a little bit like preaching to the choir, because most of us are like, why would we fool with all of this just to watch the kilowatts go by? It's about trying to get some value out of it by making things better, becoming more efficient. If we go back to the definition in 50,001 definition 312, you'll remember that energy performance is measurable results related to energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption. The note there is that energy performance is part of our evaluation of the performance of the energy management system. So I can have an effective energy management system that all the wheels are turning, but if there's no progress in the performance, in my energy performance, then maybe I really don't have an effective system. I just have something that's prescribed a bunch of busy work. So it's measurable results related to energy efficiency. So energy efficiency might be the rate at which I'm converting something. It's usually some ratio or some percentage, right? The boiler's 85% efficient. Both the input and output are needed to clearly define some type of efficiency. We take the outputs divided by the inputs and we get whether it's plant-wide, system-wide, or at the equipment level. These are all just examples of how we might measure efficiency. Measurable results related to energy use. Remember, that's part of our definition of performance. So what do we mean by improving energy performance related to use? That seems a little awkward to me, even as an engineer. And the first example here is maybe the best way to define it. So I've been told, I've never been there, but if you go to Henry Ford's home is it Dearborn,
Michigan.
Yeah. his house was next to the factory at the time, and his friend was telling me about it. We were both in the air compressor business at the time. He thought it was interesting because Henry Ford had a line run over to his house in the bathroom from the plant, compressed air system in the plant, so he could dry his hair off when he got out of the shower. Now, that's back when they probably made compressed air with steam. It was probably extra steam they had anyway. But it's not a very effective use of compressed air. There are better ways to dry your hair. One would just be let it dry. Two, you can use some type of more appropriate blower or whatever. And that's true industrially as well. There are a lot of applications because it's convenient or easy that people do things out of habit or design when there are more effective ways to do it. Different types of electric versus gas heating, a lot of different examples of that. And this is not an either or, this is not good and this is bad, or this is good and that's bad. I've seen people go from gas to electric because this is an intermittent load and they want to be able to turn it on and off. I've seen people do the reverse because it was really continuous and the efficiency of the gas burner over the cost of the electric heating element doing that. Powder coating ovens, you can get infrared elements or you can have a gas-fired powder coating oven. It depends on the application. The point is that energy efficiency can be improved by the way that I apply the technology. So, what might be an example in lighting? Of improving energy performance.
Candlelight, electric light.
Do what? Oh, candlelight.
That's a joke.
No, just going from fluorescent or incandescent to LED, right? I didn't really change the source of the energy for my use, but I changed the use in the sense that I went from compact fluorescent lighting to LED lighting. So measurable results related to energy consumption. I think this is an obvious one for most people. I would expect for any normal set of activities, if I'm improving performance, then I'm reducing my dependence on kilowatts or BTUs or whatever my raw measure consumption is. As we said early on, we were talking about monitoring, measurement, and analysis. Sometimes this is the only measure of performance a company will initially have when they start implementing 50,000 watts. And hopefully, if they're being really effective, it does show up in their meter at some point. Either by maintaining the level, even though output has increased. It may not be a direct reduction in consumption, but our sales are twice as much, so we're shipping twice the number of units, but we've been able to maintain last year's budget for our energy inputs. That would be just as valid. So the other note related to the definition of energy performance is the context of the energy management system's results can be measured against the organization's energy policy, objectives, targets, and other energy performance requirements. So part of our evaluation of performance likewise will include, what is their attainment, how well they set objectives and targets, and what is their tracking towards achieving those. And do they support and fulfill the policy that they designed the system around? Going back to section 4.6.1 that we talked about yesterday, it said that the organization shall ensure that the key characteristics of its operations that determine energy performance are monitored, measured, and analyzed at planned intervals. These key characteristics, I'll remind you that list again. We won't go back over that, but really the way I think about it, this is the whole basket of things in which we kind of collectively look at to understand is performance improvement. Not just our indicators, with how well we're achieving our objectives and targets, how well we're managing our SEUs, how we're understanding significant deviations and our attainment of what energy consumption, use, and performance that we expect in the future. I almost should skip this slide, but I'll explain why this goofy looking thing is in here. We used to have this layout to try and show all the different ways that energy performance was related to the standard. So these are all the sections that reference energy performance. These sections actually reference an improvement in energy performance, and these sections reference the effective energy performance. The colors, they used to be different shapes as well, because like triangles or octagons, because when you printed the slides in black and white, you lost all the legend for, energy performance had one shape and color and so forth. Anyway, enough said. To me, this is easier pulled from the occurrences table. The main thing is, it's in there a lot, guys. We can't escape the fact that energy performance is a consideration when we audit, when we implement, when we manage in the context of our ENS. So here's the target. Reduce boiler gas natural consumption in calendar year 2010 by 7.5% when we compare it to the previous year of 2009. We do the analysis. We didn't reach our target. We only had a 6% reduction. We're doing an internal audit. And we just went through all that understanding of what energy performance is and how we are to interpret that relative to our management system. And we're looking at this as an auditor for a minute. Is this a non-conformity? They didn't achieve their target. What do you think? What would be your next move as an auditor to get you to think like that in just a minute? This is not an auditing class, but it's a good exercise for a CP to put on.
Rethink your targets for next year.
Or change your management system to achieve it.
Or try to identify more opportunities.
Underlying all of those is another question.
Why is that target the measure of energy performance?
You might ask, what did you do to understand why that was less? So what was management's response to the missed target? That's what I want to see as an auditor. Not that they missed it or came up short, because maybe this was unachievable. Maybe it was unrealistic in given their mode and their technology and all that. At least they're trying and they got something done, and that's a very positive thing. So the positive finding is that you had improvement, but you didn't reach your target. Tell me what you did when you recognized you weren't going to achieve that target. Well, we did, when we looked at all the data, we had 3 months in a row where we were 10 degrees below the normal average for those months last winter. And it shot our gas consumption through the roof, and there was just, we were in a heavy sales season. We couldn't cut back production. There was nothing, we were doing good to get 6%. The fact that they investigated that they understood it, it might give them feedback for next year's target on, how to think about it. If I was to audit and they said, well, yeah, we know, well, we were just hoping we could get to 7.5, that may not be bad in and of itself, but if there was really no no response to this, no interest in why these weren't attained, then you know, the suspicion goes up as an auditor, well, what were they doing with that target, and how were they using that to really drive performance? So it's much we're interested in how the system is working in this regard as much as what the numbers tell us. So a company has steam and compressed air systems in their production process. Steam is our SEU. And we're looking at the energy review and their list of uses, and we noticed that the compressed air system is just as significant as, in terms of consumption, as the steam system. It's not a non-conforming. Why?
There may not be an opportunity for improvement with the compressed air system.
Who gets to define the criteria around which significance is defined?
The organization.
So what, as an auditor, you would go look at, did they apply that criteria consistently? If they skipped over the compressors because they just didn't want to fool with it, when all the criteria says it should be on the list as well, that would be a finding, right? They didn't do what they said they were going to do. The fact that they do have a significant use that's equal to this other significant use may be an opportunity for improvement, but it may not be a finding. Maybe this is their first time in, and that coach from Georgia Tech said, don't list too many SEUs first time around, just so you can get, you know, experience with the management system.
Yeah, so in that situation, it is that they just didn't want to fool with it because they're just trying to build on it. So it still wouldn't be a non-conformity then, right?
Well, it wouldn't be, because what they would say is we want to work on the thing that we have the most opportunity for. So
Sure.
they have some criteria that said, well, our steam system is the best place to start.
Okay.
But it would really get probably back to that criteria around their opportunity for improvement. You know, if this is a company, this is their third recertification audit, or you're 5 or 6 years into it, and they've had the steam system as an SEU for 5 or 6 years and not really grown beyond that. You're probably going to find other evidences that they're just kind of maintained and they're not really pressing. But this is a contributing factor to your consideration that they may not be doing all that they could to improve energy performance. Maybe their intention of satisfying that underlying principle of, or underlying aim of the standard is not in place in their organization. So all of these are around key characteristics which are part of our definition of energy performance. We're just trying to help you think about it. The company defines a significant deviation as plus or minus 10% of the estimated consumption. So their estimate consumption, if their actual comes in within 10% of that, then they're good. If they miss it by more than 10%, they have themselves defined a significant deviation that requires what? What does a significant deviation require of the organization? In 4.6.1, what does it say? They have to investigate, right? They have to have a response. This has to trigger something that happens. Now, they don't have to necessarily fix it, but there needs to be evidence that something was investigated. So their SEU, I guess it's for the board in this case. The red line is our estimate. So this is 12 months of estimates for our board, which is our SEU. And we were closed for 2 months, or for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, 9 months. We're more than 10% above for sure, right? Maybe that's the only point that's within 10% of the estimate. There's no evidence anywhere in here that they responded to these deviations and tried to understand why they were consistently below their performance and their expectation. Is this a nonconformity?
Yes.
It's not a one-off occurrence, you know. The guy had a death in his family and something happened and it just, by the time the audit occurred, we just hadn't got around to that one. This is a systematic failure of the system to do what they said they were going to do. I would agree. Doesn't mean overall that performance is not improving, because other things could counteract this, but this would be evidence to an auditor that I might ask some more probing questions in other areas, because if this is here, there's probably other symptoms in the system.
So if it's a one-off thing, then it's fine, it's not a non-conforming.
Well, it depends. It just depends. Probably as a one-off, even though it's in their procedure, I'd write it as a minor non-conforming. That would probably be a major. Just the legacy of just continuing to ignore.
How many meter issues that they have to still pass the audit?
Well, it's up to the verification body or the certification body. They'll have a definition. So some of them have rules that if you have 3 or 4 minor nonconformities within a specific requirement, that's an automatic major. Or X number of minor nonconformities in the audit is a major finding. Typically, any major nonconformities must be addressed for certification to be achieved. Now, how those are addressed are that some of them have to actually be fixed and corrected before the certification can be done. Sometimes they will say, we want to see your corrective action plan for this, and as long as you have a corrective action plan in place, they'll go ahead and certify you, but then they'll follow up with surveillance to see that you finish the corrective action. But you won't have to have completed, sometimes a corrective action may take weeks or months. If it's not a single element that's really holding up the effectiveness of the standard, you know, they'll let it work through the system and they'll keep monitoring it as you go forward. That's why I say what you really want the auditors to find are the things that could be fixed and better, because it just makes it stronger. So they have a defined ENPI in this example, BTUs per pound. This is our annual tracking. That's the last 12 months. What's the trend on that line?
Not improvement.
It's going up. We're using more BTUs per pound, and we've been working on 50,001 in SCP since December of last year, and it's just gone in the wrong direction. Is that a non-conformity? Is energy performance not improving?
I can't tell from these,
Why not?
because that might be fantastic compared to the year before.
Or production program.
Yeah, maybe this is a record month of production, like you say, last year, or maybe all last year was. Maybe this represents a product mix, and now I've moved to a higher mix of my product that's more energy intense than I had previously. There's a lot of questions. As an auditor, I'm not as worried about the direction or the number as I am how they interpret that and what evidence you see for that interpretation.
Wouldn't you encourage them to choose a different performance indicator?
Well, that might be an OFI that the auditor might write. Have you considered?
Externally, that would be consultant.
Yeah.
They do that.
Right.
Internally-
Internal audit, yeah.
Internally, we can't.
So here's a policy statement from Cactus Steering. They continually improve energy performance, achieving a 25% energy intensity reduction over 10 years, providing resources to meet objectives and targets, abiding by legal and other requirements, supporting purchasing for energy efficiency. Pretty good policy statement relative to the requirements of the standard. Here's the 10-year performance of 2002 and 2012, and they only had a 20% reduction in energy intensity. Now, this is their policy statement. I wish we had a bunch of auditors in the room, because we'd have a very lively debate about whether this is a non-conforming or not. All the energy folks are going, well, shoot, no, that's not. The audit folks are going, they put it in policy and they didn't achieve it. There's no, it's cut and dry. Didn't want to hold themselves accountable, they should have put it in the policy. Dan, you got an opinion on that one?
It would lead to an awful lot of questions. It's
Yeah.
not a good plan.
Yeah. Another reason why my coaching, from the CP and the implementation side of things is try to avoid putting your objectives and targets in the policy. I mean, you might say, we have a target for reducing energy intensity over the next 10 years. And then point to the objectives, which you can then adjust and change as things change.
I don't want to disincentivize people from having stretch goals.
Right, so my point is don't put it in the policy.
Yeah.
You can have a stretch goal, it's not a problem. The question is, this puts it square in the lap of senior management
Right.
to defend the policy. So if you walked up to your boss and your boss's boss and said, you committed to 25% energy reduction over 10 years, and this is what you achieved, can you please explain that? You're not putting them in the best position. So from a organizational point of view, they have to answer to it, which may be what you want to do, but that's who has to answer this.
Well, the interesting thing about we were working with the Marine Corps base on their objectives and targets in their policy, their traditional history has been to put all those mandates they have in their policy. It's proof that this is what we're trying to do, right? It's more of an organizational and cultural thing, the way that the military structure works. And we were trying to talk to them out of it, for our reasons on the management system side. And then we asked them, so, well, what happens if you don't make that 2015 target for 30% reduction? They said nothing.
How, as an auditor though, how would this be any different if that 25% was in either like an O or T, right? I mean,
Well, the very first example I had was the boiler improvement. 7.5, and we only made 6.
right. I don't see it any different as a policy or an objective. Either way, you didn't meet it.
My policy is that we're going to treat everyone fairly. Put it in your context, we're going to give equal promotion opportunities to women and men. And you get passed over 4 times. Is that a violation of the policy?
Well,
Everything else being equal, it is, right? I mean, it's in the policy. We're going to do this. This is our
Right.
commitment.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that. I just think like, yeah.
If it's in the policy, the basic presumption is that is what senior management, that is where senior management is setting this is how they're steering the boat. This
Right.
is what they're making the strategic commitments to. This is where they are saying you are going to go.
Yeah.
And if they put a number to it, that is what you are going to reach.
Right.
So it's different than if you want to set stretch goals through an objectives process.
Right.
Where you then have targets, and that's where they go from being a stretch to being, all right, we want to get 25, but you know what? Maybe we'll only get 15 right now, and we're going to still look for that other 10
Sure.
to investigate some new technology.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Sure.
You've got a process to go about doing that. But putting it here in the policy is a place where senior management's signing their name and saying, this is going to be done.
Yeah.
So from an audit perspective, once senior management says this is what's going to be done, that's as the auditor what I have to hold the rest of the organization accountable to. So
And
they
you
don't
get the
have-
traditional auditors in here, they will, in my experience in this course is 100 times out of 100, an auditor will say, because it's in the policy and they didn't achieve it, it's
It's a non-conforming. And that's also what.
Because they said, we're going to do this, and they didn't do it.
So,
This
but-
is what you said, this is what you have
Yeah,
to do.
if you didn't want to get burned by it, then don't say it.
So, but it's okay to put it in the target.
Yeah.
In the what?
But that has a different role. Those objectives and targets are how you direct the efforts of the organization,
Still signed off by senior management.
not necessarily.
Not necessarily,
I thought that was the whole, like, okay, we're not talking SCP at this point.
yeah.
So is it recommended that the energy policy do not have any numbers to it?
Most
Just
of
narrative.
them don't. Most of them do not have numbers in them, not at the policy level.
The policy is here's the direction and the foundation for our energy management system. They want the policy to be flexible enough that they can adapt to technologies and process changes and market conditions and all of that.
Yeah.
Without hanging themselves in their policy.
Yeah.
And it's really the role of policy. What does it mean?
Yeah.
We had hours of debate in the military institution because policy to them means something completely different.
And I think that's, I mean, as an auditor, what this does for me is it creates this huge set of questions I didn't have to answer, because that's actually where I go next. What is a policy in your organization? Show me a policy on another topic, and how is this then implemented throughout your organization? And if you failed to meet a policy commitment in this, what would that mean? So a policy, as it's written in this is what the board is committing to. This is what the board is promising will happen. So this would be, like the board of Walmart saying, we're never going to open on Christmas again.
Yeah.
And then turning around and saying, we'll be open at 2 a.m. for special red light sales. Yeah. And to an auditor, that's exactly what just happened. So you have to, the first thing when I see something like this, the first thing I have to say is, all right, what is policy in this organization? And then what is this thing, the standard means this to be, what is that called here? And where does this fall in that realm of reality? This is a very high-level document. It's taken as being, this is the albatross around your neck. This is what you committed to. This is what you're held accountable to. And it's also why when you interview senior management, you want to keep them on a very tight and narrow road, because whatever they say, they commit everybody else in the audit to that information. So even if it's not written in the policy statement, but my senior manager, the president of the site says, yes, we're committed to achieving an intensity reduction over 10 years, and I've challenged this plant to hit 42%. Guess what I have to go out and audit to? 42%. Because he's just committed that.
That puts it in perspective right there, that statement does.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
The-
sure.
The other ambiguity here, if I audit the next year, does that mean 2013 compared to 2003 also has to be a 25% improvement? 2014 compared to 2004? I didn't, I just said over 10 years. What 10 years did I define? The other side, part of the practical reason in the military setting we were trying to get them to take them out was, it's like pulling teeth to get a policy approved. It's very difficult. It took us almost the whole project just to get the policy approved. We were working on the system with no policy or a draft version, because it had to go through all these channels and up the chain of command, back down the chain of command. The point of all that was, when you reach if they said we want to achieve a 25% energy intensity reduction in 2012 for with a 10-year baseline, what happens in 2013? You have to write a new policy.
Or that one's not binding
And why have it in there?
anymore.
So what if this 25% is in the energy target? If this happens, will that still be a non-conformity?
Well, we talked about that when we looked at the boiler that didn't achieve. We had 6% instead of 7.5%.
But this one, they already 10 years have passed, but they did not ever go back to, I thought they have to evaluate their target, if to see, maybe the target is too aggressive. They probably need to,
The auditor's going to ask more questions, right? So what did you do? Did you do anything to understand why you've only got the 20% and not 25. You look at the management review notes to see the minutes of the management review meeting to see if they discussed and tried to understand that. You look at the other things that the energy team did in relation to either adjusting the target or understanding what was driving that difference. You'd have years of history here, right?
Yeah.
It was a 10-year objective. So you wouldn't be writing a finding on a one-off incident. It would take you maybe more than a year to get there if this was an objective and that was the result. But again, that may have been a stretch goal. They said, if everything's perfect, we can get to 25%. Well, it wasn't perfect, but we did get to 20%. But if they knew why, they could explain it, and if they were managing it appropriately, it wouldn't be a finding if that was the objective. The rub here is that they put it in the policy, and the policy is this is what we're going to do. This is not just what we'd like to do. This is what we're going to do. And they didn't do it.
So let's say in that example, like auditor goes in 2007 and sees like 10% reduction using that, what would these comments or his comments be like? We are not at 2012, let's say they are going for certification in 2007. And
She would be looking for any investigation of that, what happened in the management review when they saw that they were only at 10% after 7 years.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be a finding at that point. It might be a concern that you're not even halfway there and you only have 3 years left to do it. So for 50,021, we have the SEP performance measure. That's really all that's saying. Bottom line, I'll tell you now, there's only a slide or two left. There's no exercise here, so we're not going to torture you with that part of it. We're not just looking at the data to understand what has happened to energy performance. We have that measured for SEP, right? We're also looking at how the system functioned, and that's what I was trying to bring out in the case where we have some expectation of achievement, whether it's a performance indicator, it's the management of our significant energy use. What evidence is in the system for how they manage that? And were they on the track to improve both themselves, the management system, and performance? And if all of that is pointing in the right direction, even if the numbers weren't positive, you would say that they're still moving. They will get there if they will honestly keep working in that direction. That's what you're looking for, right? So you look at this data to determine how much the information is pointing us at the improvement. This is key, though, to long-term success. A system capable of demonstrating continual improvement of the results related to energy efficiency and consumption.
so related to that system improvement, there is this.
The management system.
Yeah. So the general requirements that we refer to in the chart. So it says achieve continual improvement of its energy performance and of its energy system.
Right, energy management system.
So does that mean like for every recertification, like that energy management system has got to be better? Like say they need to add more SEU or how
Yeah, to a certain degree. So the last section of internal audits that Deanne was talking to you guys about, one of the things that's an input to audit planning is status and importance, right? You remember that term? Did you use that term, Deanne? So if I'm going to, status and importance is trying to think of some extreme examples, and my brain's a little blank. But the point is that if I look at the corrective action system, and that all of their nonconformities and all their corrective actions are always in the energy review. And it never seems to get any better. They always keep fixing the same problems over and over and over. That's evidence that they don't have improvement in their management system. It's not helping them get any better. So if all my nonconformities keep showing up in a certain department or a certain area, and there never seems to be any progress in terms of how we're going beyond this or that issue, they're not solving the root problem, they just keep treating symptoms, they don't have an effective management system. So that's one of the things the auditors look at. They look at the internal audit reports, where the findings come from, they look at management review, how's management interacting with that, they look at the corrective action system. Do they appear to be fixing things and fixing them once and moving on to better positions in all of the parts of their system? That's how you're evaluating the overall performance of the management system. And in the end, if they're doing all that, these other pieces will be getting better too. They'll be improving performance, they'll be setting better objectives and targets, they'll be defining good action plans, they'll be trying to get more data, more information, managing more of their systems as an SCU. So, and this is related to that. Does the plant or the organization already have a system for dealing with nonconformities, a corrective action system? We're going to talk about that next. And do you have a way, you either got to help them set up something that will be effective so that they have a response. If they're not meeting their objectives and targets, they know, that the system brings that to their attention and they take actions to understand it and move forward to correct the root causes. And if they have something, how do you make it work for them? If they don't have something, then you got to help them get something in place. So you have an appreciation at least for kind of the breadth within 50,001 of what we mean by energy performance. If you set on top of that for the CP what we have for SCP, you have a pretty complete picture. I've never seen anyone who was committed to SCP that didn't have a good management system in place, because they really were committed to trying to make improvements. It's not like they're trying to massage the numbers over here and get some certificate from the Department of Energy and doing this bare minimum on the backside to keep the paperwork up. It was people like 3M or Schneider Electric, or who really saw the bottom line benefits of doing energy management. So they take it seriously, and they, this has never been an issue on an audit I've been involved in. But part of our, this course has been developed for some time. We're in the negotiations in ISO and are fighting for energy performance and its position in the standard. So when it came out, there was a lot of scuttle before the final version was released. Oh, it really doesn't have energy performance in it. And so we put this strong position in this course just to help you appreciate and understand what the standard is really trying to implement in your organization. What I've seen of the people that have implemented, of course, have been the faithful few in this country. This is not an issue for us. Probably wouldn't be for you in most organizations. Any questions or thoughts, comments on that?
You guys want to take a break before we hit that last topic?
Yeah, let's take it to 5. I was going to show you, I'll put this up during the break. They did put the scorecard calculator on the scorecard webpage. This is the current.
See, I already did.
Yeah. That's just a spreadsheet tool to help you calculate the current scorecard points. It won't help you for the new scorecard, but the current one it will do. If you want to download that, we'll fix that one and make it updated when the new scorecard comes out. But there's the scorecards, a free download, and then there's the calculator, so it is up there. Let me close some stuff before you be in.
Yeah, I think we're confused with the
These PDFs were yours, you
Yeah, you can close those.
see, that was mine.
I think it's probably been 2003 and 21.
You don't need them.
Okay. For those.
It's the home stretch now, guys.
Yeah.
Not much longer.
So Randy, when you say you're in talks with ISO to try to get energy performance into the 50,001 standard,
Yeah.
what are you guys trying to, like, are you trying to get like the whole scale regression kind of analysis into SAP? Like,
Well,
I'll let Deanne answer that.
we are doing that. We did that. The document we used for that is 50,047, which should be published. I signed off on the proof this week. I forgot to ask you something about that. I'm about to sign off on that proof. So it should be ready to go out. So we that.
So 50,047 is an American standard. No, it's an ISO
It's an ISO
standard.
standard, and it's the equivalent of the MMD protocol. It's the international version of the MMD protocol.
So it's the document on how to measure energy performance for 50,001.
Yeah, it will, how to measure energy performance for organizations.
Okay, so and that ISO 50,001 is probably gonna order.
Well, that's what we did for that one. Then for 50,001, the current position that we have there, energy performance is still a battleground. It's still a huge battleground. So the U.S. delegation has been instructed to continue to fight for that. But we do have included as a requirement now in 50,001 is to normalize. We didn't say how to normalize, so we haven't required regression, but they do have to normalize, which is a step up from where it was.
Because like from my thing is like from a better finance background. So what I find is like if you want to do energy calculations and then you want to do it all the way like SAP, you want to do that bottom up. That's only when you will find like that is like real value because that's when you can be like confident on how to do a bottom up when your projects like add up to what you see in the regression. And but a lot of companies don't have that bandwidth to do that. So that
So
is
we
the
just-
so that's why like in better plans we like then just say yeah you can do a simple energy intensity if that's what you already want to do. We push them towards SUV but not a lot of them could spend the time to do the whole thing.
Well, that's why we say normalize, but we haven't said regression yet. But 50,047 is on how to do it for organizations.
Does that become a
happen.
normative reference for 50,001?
We
I'm still
haven't-
unclear to me on what the relationship is in terms of
Right now,
binding
it's,
and all.
okay, so right now, it's not a requirement of 50,001, it's a guidance document, because the scope of that was originally done as a guidance document. So to make it normative, I need a audit protocol that is for MMV. So we have just started that is 17 and 29. It's a brand new Cascode document, it's never been done before, brand new area in Cascode. So we are just starting that document, we anticipate it'll be available 2019. And we have the new work item proposal in to then create the global SEP version, which would then use 17 and 29 audit and verify that.
So with that, do you think
performance.
that will end up creating a PV role in a 50,001 audit, or we just add on to what the lead auditor has to do for 50,000?
We will have two options. We'll have one where if you did it to 50,001, then you would need another person who is qualified under 17029, which is separate from 50,000 from
Okay.
17021. So it could be an add-on where you had a PV role and they got the separate certificate for this international level. Or you could have an individual certificate to the 17029 version and not have the 50,001. I can't backlink 50,001 in there
Right.
because it's a separate audit standard.
But then you just bring in another person who had this,
21.
it might be the same person.
It might be the same
But they're
person.
independent credentials.
Yeah, they'll be independent credentials.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are creating the audit standard, the credentialing, and then we're starting conversations on what would the global performance look like. But first I have to create the audit document. So first I have to convince people,
Well, at least we got the SCP experience behind us.
Yeah.
We're not drafting it in the dark.
no, we're not drafting in the dark. But it is.
This one doesn't have that many slides.
No, it doesn't. It should be fast. Okay.
Does it have an exercise? I don't think this even has an exercise.
Might have one where you, look at their procedure or something.
Usually by the last period, they're not wanting to hang around. Well, I'm looking at the wrong slide.
Yeah, when you work with companies, do you use it for that?
I refer to it heavily, I don't like pull it out in front of them and let's work through it together. It's like, I want you to go read this section.
Oh, no.
Read these sections before we read this.
And does that help?
If they read it, yes.
We're working on one for the funding.
I mean, when they, you know, the first, when people first through, they're attracted to all those resources we have, the worksheets and examples. Because you're struggling to put your feet on the ground. And all this text, as they get into it, the narrative that we have there really helps them understand what the intended standard is. And they move towards that. I wish they would read that and appreciate it, but they seem to migrate towards, just give me the worksheet. That's human nature, I'm probably the same way. I mean, I know if I'm trying to learn how to do something, when I'm trying to learn how to encrypt these PDFs for our sales and standards, just show me an example and follow what we did, and I'll steal the parts that I need to do it. I didn't want to read all the intent behind it. And so I'm guilty on that side myself. I do the same thing. I just need to know where to turn the car on and the steering wheel. I'll understand how the loop works later. And that might be a good concept to keep in mind as we go through this. In the end, probably the most of it would be to just help them take those steps correctly, even though they don't understand what they're doing, they don't realize they're leaving.
All right.
Well, we can go back and read about it if they
Right,
wanted to.
right. And once they get to a certain place, it's like, well, how did I get here? Well, let me read about it.
Okay.
It's down to the end, I think we want to have maybe a team meeting or conversations about all that's in front of us. We have this for online, but we also have to move to convert these slides into the other. And just make sure that we are thinking about resources, people's timeline, deadlines.
I can answer that question, no. That's
Well,
definitely
I just,
no.
I don't know, I can see the need to do that.
Okay, so we'll start with corrective action.
Together for everything.
I know everybody wants out, so.
I know y'all have.
We made it to module 12, yeah.
All right, so corrective action is kind of, internal audit is defined and corrective action is the fix. It is a section they have to audit, we audit 3 times in a cycle. So let me give you some new words. Auditing, we like to create new words. So if I want to know what's going on within a single audit, so this is happening at 8, this is happening at 10, this is happening at 3. This is an audit plan or audit agenda. If I want to know what's going on within an audit cycle, so initial, surveillance 1, surveillance 2, and research. So what items are being audited in each one of those? This is called an audit program. And in the ISO standards, it's a program with 2 M's and an E, programming. So across multiple audits, it's an audit program, and across a single audit, it's an audit plan. So one of the things that we do in corrective action is say, okay, so across various audits, what types of things have you done? And one of the things we look for is, okay, so in audit 1, you may not have had any findings, but in audit 2, you had findings from audit 1. So guess one of the things that you follow up on using corrective action is, did they follow up on the actions that were corrected to see if they were actually implemented and completed? So we take so as internal auditors, what you do is you take the corrective actions that you got back from people that says, oh, you found this, here's what the problem was, here's what the root cause is, and here's our solution, and this is what we did about it, and you go and look and say, did they do it? So think about it this way. I can stand there and say, okay, Addison and Devin, time to go upstairs and clean up your room. I can wait 10 minutes and they'll be back downstairs doing whatever it is they want to do, playing games or watching TV or throwing stuff at each other or chasing the cat or whatever. Did you clean up your room? Of course. I can go up and look and go, okay, we have a different definition of clean. Let's try it again.
What did they write on their form that they were going to do?
Yeah, exactly. What did you say you were going to do? So we have to come to an agreement about what we mean to say it's effective. Well, corrective action is going to be handed off to the internal auditors for them to verify that those actions were taken and that they're working, so the room is clean or whatever it is they're supposed to have done is done. So corrective action is the fixing part. Now there's another term up here, preventive. So corrective action looks at things that have happened. Okay. You have been to this course. It has happened. It has occurred. Preventive looks at data to get an indication of what may happen. So preventive is predictive. Corrective is reactive. So the idea is that you have a system that does 2 things. You have a system that responds to things that have occurred. That's corrective action. There's usually a form. You usually fill it out, and it gets checked during internal audit. Preventive may not have a form. Preventive is where you look at the data, and you say the trend is saying this is going. This is okay. Let's think about this for a second. Hurricane tracking. Do they know where this thing is going to hit?
Kind of no.
Kind of, sort of. It's heading sort of kind of that way.
They think it's going straight to my parents.
Yeah. So, they have a trend, and based on that trend, they are providing information. Well, that's preventive action. So you would look at your energy data and your utility data, and you might say, hey, the trend is, you might look at the production data and say, the trend is we're going to have to add a shift, which is going to increase our energy consumption. And our billing is going to go through the roof because our demand charges are going to be out our ears. So we need to take a look at our sources and at our billing structure. That would be an example of preventive. You're looking at a trend, just like you look at the trend of where the hurricane is going. They're showing you hurricane trends right now. They're not showing you, they are showing you where it is, but they're also projecting the trend. So the trend and use of trends is preventive. You might have that be the responsibility in an organization of the CP&MS. It's a great role for the CP to play, where they take a look at the data and they trend it and go, hey, your ENPIs are no longer responding the way we thought they would. We need a new ENPI. Hey, this thing is happening over here. We may need an indicator to let us know what's going on over here. We don't have an indicator. We don't have any way of testing what's happening over here. Hey, you know what? We got something weird going on second shift because their energy consumption is only a fourth of what it is on first shift, and they produce as many widgets. We need to get first shift to do it like second shift. And first shift goes, okay, ship all the managers to second shift, and we'll get just as well as second shift with this energy. And you never know what their root cause might be.
Our
But-
first shift's like, hey, it's daytime, we don't have the lights on.
That's right.
On the first shift, you turn off your lights.
Never mind. So, here we go. We're gonna be talking about corrective versus preventive. The other type of action you have is correction. Correction. So correction occurs when there is a problem, you know exactly what's wrong, and you need to take immediate action to fix it, or action relatively soon to fix it. So for example, if you're driving and you weave over into the other lane, the correction is to get back where you're supposed to be. Do you need to do a root cause on that? Well, no, it's probably your cell phone. We can all pretty much guess what that is. Probably cell phone. Same thing happens. In the management system, sometimes energy data varies, and you can make a small correction, but you don't need to do a corrective action. You don't need to search for a cause at this time. So that's when you might do a correction. The other thing is you may need more data to figure it out. It blipped, you looked at it, you can't reproduce it, you don't have enough data to do anything. You might do an immediate correction, and then you might, see what happens. So correction is used in several different situations, but it's when you do not need to do a root cause analysis. You don't need to figure out the why behind it. You also do not want to flood your system with a ton of corrective actions. What you do want to do is figure out what you need to fix. That means, first of all, you have to take, for example, if it came from an internal audit, you have to take the nonconformity and create a problem statement. A nonconformity is not a problem statement. Once you have a problem statement, then you want to go through the basic system of solving problems and come up with a solution or a cause and analysis. If you need some place to recommend for people to do that, I'll show you a couple of sites. I'm sure you've got others. This is a site out of the UK. It's actually quite good. But let's say I wanted to do problem solving. They have 40 tools in problem solving. You click on the little button, and this is, I haven't logged in. I'm not doing anything other than here. I come over here, browse by category. What is problem solving? Avoiding logical fallacies, general problem solving tools, problem solving approaches, finding causes of a problem. They have 8 tools there. Here are 8 tools that you can use. And if you click on one of them, I'm going to pick one I know you all have seen. I'll pick 5 Whys. And it tells you, it gives you a video on what that is. It gives you a tool, tells you a little bit about it. It gives you examples, when to use it, and more and more information, key points on how to use it, et cetera, et cetera. And if once you've studied it, you can even add it to your learning plan, and then you can continue to add others as you go. And because I'm using the free version, this pops up every so often, so you have to go, no, thank you. You can go to others as well in here. So you can come down here and pick interrelationship diagrams. Okay. And you just run through, and it tells you how to do it and all the great information about how to use that particular one.
They also
Yes.
have, that site has some good stuff on ideation and like coming up, kind of brainstorm opportunities,
Oh, yeah.
improvement, things like that.
It's got all kinds of stuff in
Yeah.
here. And you can download most of the tools. And it's even if you do decide you don't want to have the little windows pop up all the time, it's like $20 for a year. It's not a hideously expensive site. There are several other related sites, but problem solving is not an innate inborn ability. So one of the things that you want to do if you're going to have somebody work on corrective action is find a way that they can understand and determine the root cause. Then you've got to give them the skill set to do that. Okay? And so as an auditor, one of my common findings, especially in new organizations, if they've got people assigned to do corrective actions who have zero capability or competency in problem solving. This is not a good plan. Okay. Give them some basic skills. In this case, you can get it directly from here. There's also root cause courses online that you can get that are free. There's any number of tools that you can point them to, but you just need some sort of record that they have those skills. So then you're going to go and they're going to find the root cause. They're going to determine the need for action. Let's stop there for just a second. Just because I have a problem and I've identified the root cause doesn't mean I have to take action. As a standard say, you have to find a fix for everything that comes into corrective action. The answer is no. You can determine that there is something you don't have a need to do. It could be too expensive, it could be something that requires capital, it could be something that you don't feel happens often enough to make it worth your investment. It could be that you know you're going to do a rebuild and 6 months from now, and so that it'll be taken care of in a more effective manner at that time. There could be a lot of reasons why you choose not to take action, but you would want a record of that. Auditors do look for a record of that. But the corrective action, the next step, first, what is the problem? Second, what is the root cause? Third, do I need to take action? Do I need to do anything? That is an actual step, okay? Do I need to take action? The answer may be yes, the answer may be no, the answer may be I need more information. Once you've made that decision, then you want to make sure that the action you are proposing is in line with the consequences of this particular situation. So, just because the guys out in the warehouse are hot does not mean we are going to air condition the warehouse. Not the way this works, okay? Yes, we're all about energy and efficiency, and yes, it will make them more comfortable. And no, I'm not going to air condition your warehouse. But thank you for asking. Okay, so good example of when I might not decide to do something. Or, what action is appropriate to that? You know what? They have this company called Big Ass Fan, and they have a great fan for us. We're going to put it out there for you. Not a problem. Or, we have some really great drinks that you can have when it's really hot outside, and I'll put out a couple of extra coolers just for you. There's a lot of ways to resolve the problem. It doesn't have to be, the highest end solution. There's a whole range or paradigm of solutions. So after you decide to take action, the next step is what actions are within the paradigm you feel are appropriate for the risk involved. Okay? Just because a spray dryer isn't functioning correctly doesn't mean you get a new spray dryer. Maybe you get a new gasket. Okay? So the action should be commensurate with the risk. You also need a record, of course, that you've done all this. The most common record is a corrective action form that just kind of literally walks you through this. If they have Lean Six Sigma has a lot of these kind of forms available. So I think we have an example in here for you guys to look at. I know there's examples on the eGuide. The Six Sigma sites have like thousands of examples. Pick one you like. If you don't like any one of these, make up your own, okay? But basically, the whole point of the corrective action system is to show from where you take in the issue, from wherever you got it, you take the information you have, create the problem statement, decide next, now I have this problem statement, who needs to be involved in making this, in engaging in this solution and making these decisions, okay? Then after you know who you need to be engaging, what is the root cause? Now that I have the root cause, do I need to take any action? I may or may not. Once you've decided, if you decide no action, that closes that out and you move on. There's your record. If you decide to take action, what's the appropriate level of action given the risk engaged here? All right, so then you've got to kind of recorded this as you go down. The next thing is you took the action, did it accomplish the intended goal? You can't actually make it worse. Not better, okay? So, just because you think you know what needs to be done doesn't mean it's the right thing that needs to be done. So when you took those actions, did they achieve the actual intended result? So that is, review for effectiveness. And finally, what other changes are necessary? So let's say, for example, that one of your actions that you've implemented is now they are going to check the stack temperature once a day, once every 24 hours instead of once a shift. And there's going to be like this rotating schedule, so no one shift is overburdened. So Monday, it might be shift A, Tuesday, shift B, Wednesday, shift C, and Thursday, it would be shift A again. So it's just kind of a rotating schedule. They've implemented it, and shift A and B are cooperating, but shift C isn't quite on board yet, so they aren't doing their temperature setting. It's going, it's implemented, and it's getting there. It's just not fully effective, and it may be that you did not change the information that shift C had on what the expectations were for that shift. So they may not know they're supposed to check the temperature based on this new rotating calendar that's sitting up there. Okay, so that's a part of other changes that you need to make. What other documents, records, training, communication, or other activities need to happen in order for this corrective action to be effective? So, SEP does require a procedure for this that is not required in 50,001. If they have any other management system in play, 9001 does require a procedure for this. 14,001, I'll have to check their new version. I don't think they do. It varies from standard to standard, but if they did implement an older version of a standard like 9001, 2008, or 14,001, 2004, those all require a procedure for this. So they may have a procedure in place that they may want to use for this. Now, here's another fun fact for our CPs. ISO standards are required to change every 5 years. And so in that 5th year, they take that document and they look at it and they do what's called a systematic review. And at systematic review, you can say, yeah, there's some little things here and there, but we're not really going to make a big change. So for example, 14,001, 2004, and 2009, they did a review. And there is an addendum to 14,001. There's a few commas and a few other little things on the addendum, which is not really worth anything. So nobody ever bothers to tell you, by the way, check the addendum. It's grammar stuff. But they didn't change anything else, but they went through the systematic review. Well, what happens after 9? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 came up. They were like, yep, we're in the middle of a revision. We're going to have a new one ready. We're going to aim for 14. Not going to happen. We're going to hit 15 because 9,000 is going to hit 15 for theirs. We want it to come out at the same time. So they decided that 15 was the year they would publish, but they had done a systematic review in 2014 and determined these were additional changes that they needed to make. So every 5 years, these documents do go through a change, and right now they have all been changing. So 50,001 systematic review was up last year. We are in the midst of changing that. Will be published probably in December 2018, latest January 2019. It will go in for publication before the holidays. It just depends on how many people in the editing department are working in December as to whether it gets published in 18 or 19. And I know that the high-level structure they're all based on is going to be changing, so they will all be updating again in 2020 or whatever the 5 years is after the publication dates. So there is a constant progression or change built into the system. These procedures come and go, but in this case, corrective action is a good procedure to have because it is your find and fix. It's the fix part. And knowing what the process is for fixing things is important because let's say that we find something that isn't working right and it's in Karen's area, but the nonconformity is in Pete's area. And the person who responded to it is Andy. And Wade comes in at the end with the solution through the corrective action system. What makes us think Karen's going to agree with us? So corrective action is one of those places where being clear about how you're gonna get all the parties engaged on the same page and to agree is important. And whenever you're going to cross functions or cross shifts, or you've got multiple groups involved, it's a really good idea to have coordination defined. So that's why I like a corrective action procedure. It doesn't need to be complicated, it doesn't need to be difficult, but if there is a procedural change, who gets to approve that? And how is that communicated before that happens? That's a very important piece. So that's why this was added to SEP, because right now it's not required in 52001. And that's an important part, especially if you're going to be getting people to give you performance data. If you're going to be getting data from them, one of the great ways of cutting down what load you're putting on me is not to carry and communicate so much data. So you put in a system where the production lines collect this data and they give it to you every month, and they go through and they average it up on a daily, weekly basis, and they send you the nice little average. Then they get a nonconformity because they didn't do it for a little bit of time. They decide the easy way to fix that is there's no requirement for this, let's just cut that puppy out. Now you don't get your data. So this is an example of why corrective action is really good, because then you can jump in there and say, hey guys, okay, let's find a way to make this easier for you, but I actually need that, so please do not just kill it. As a simple example. Okay. So let's take a look at their procedure. Let's look at it here.
You have to look at the case study data. I don't know if it's up there. You might look at the answer. Yeah. You want it right quick? It'll be in the pre-quarter. Case study.
That's the data, right? There it is. Okay, so this is their form. All right, so we can take a look at their form. Facts concerning nonconformities. Criteria, why do we have to do this? Evidence, what happened. Short term, this could also be called correction. What did we do right away? Results of root cause analysis. Okay. Do you know what they tried or what technique they used, or is there room for them to do anything here? Those would all be interesting questions to ask.
Or even really, who did it?
Yeah, who did it? Long-term action. So when are we going to get this implemented? Documents to be generated, revised, or withdrawn. So that's the changes. Training is not identified here. It may not be a document that gets generated. It may be training that gets done.
There's also not a whole lot of room to.
Yeah. And then this is the effectiveness for that action, and then did you take it? Now here's an interesting question, because this does bring up a real life situation. Sometimes you try something and it doesn't work. So you get to the end of this form and you say, no, it didn't work. So if you're tracking this, what do? Do you close this one and open a new one? Do you open part 2? Do you issue a new date? What do you do? Because you've got to track these things and follow up on them through internal audits. So what would you do?
By saying it didn't work, does that mean that essentially the finding is still happening?
Mhm.
Why it didn't work?
Yeah, they came up with a solution that wasn't a correct one.
Well, it looks like KRM is going to assign a new CFAR because they can reject it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
they have a
case
new
it is
number.
rejected, they will assign a new number.
So that's how they're gonna do it. They're gonna issue a new one and they're gonna close this one. This didn't work, close. Here's a new number, let's see how that works. So they could have it going, it could go 2 through 3, 4, 5 revisions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, auditors are okay with that. What if you send it out there and it's 6 months later and you haven't heard anything? There's been no response. What do you think?
Your system is not working.
Yeah, you can't just go and not hear anything. For external audits, for your clients, what happens to the nonconformities that your certification body or verification body identifies?
What happens to them?
What are their expectations?
Oh, they're done
Yeah, they have to be remedied or tried again.
prior to the next audit.
Okay, they have to be fixed. The way that works is they say, all right, here's your nonconformities. You need to respond with your plan to address this to the lead auditor, and they will give you a time frame. That time frame varies throughout the industry. Some of them do 15 days, some do 30, some do 45. 30 is probably fairly common, one of the more common time frames. And then you respond, the lead auditor looks over it, says, yeah, this is gonna address it. No, this is name closed. Or, they're getting there, but they're not quite there yet. They would return it with comments if they didn't like it, or they would return it saying, yeah, we accept it. Now, if they're minor issues, they typically will say, and we'll follow up on this in our next audit. But they can't recommend you for certification in an initial audit until they have received those responses. And if it's a major finding, 90% of the time, they're gonna wanna come back to the site to see it, but not 100% of the time. So you would need to be very clear on their requirements in terms of, are they coming back to verify this before they can make a recommendation? Or are we okay, or, you know, what are they doing? They may say, we're coming back to see it, we're gonna go ahead and refer you, but we're gonna reduce the time between audits down from a year to 6 months. And they can do that as well. It's the tool in their toolbox.
Like the surveillance audit.
They can add surveillance audits. Yeah. Okay.
So if you are certified by a auditing body, certification body,
Mhm.
so you are tied up to that company for 3 years, right? Or even the recertification, you are tied up to them or?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
As an organization, you can change verification certification bodies. It's called a transfer audit. So you can transfer from company A to company B. So let's see, today we'll transfer from Lloyd's to Advanced Waste, both of which are verification bodies. So I could transfer from one to the other. I would contact the new company I was interested in. I would get a quote from them. I would let them know I'm already certified and my certificate is currently valid. I would then ask them for their process for a transfer audit. They would tell me, and then I would initiate that process. You need to complete the transfer before your certificate from Lloyd's, in this case, expires. If it expires during the transfer process, you can no longer transfer, you have to be recertified. So that's the only caveat. But you can transfer at any point. You can transfer after your first surveillance, you can transfer at the end. There's no issue with actual transferring audits.
But you're in the middle of a contract too, so you have all those issues of,
There's a contract fee.
there'll be an out clause in the contract. So.
It'll cost you, but you can do it. All right. So corrective action's not that hard.
I'd say most of these, in fact, probably every one of these I've seen are now electronic. There's There's a SharePoint site or some central database that they maintain the CCAR in. So it's not, you're not usually limited by the space on the form like this one, where they give you a piece of paper.
A lot of times you just click on it, it automatically numbers it for you. This is corrective action number 7. It's due here. There's also a concept of escalation that's used in the majority of systems. So if I send a corrective action to Pete and he has 30 days to respond, and 45 days later he still hasn't responded, then it escalates up the chain, one above Pete. So we'll say it goes up to Paul. Then Paul has 15 days to respond. And if he doesn't respond, then it escalates up again. So it has a way of escalating. Now, here's a suggestion, because I found this very useful inside organizations. If you resolve a corrective action, include information on here about the value of that solution, and invite the people involved in creating that solution for your organization to attend and present to management review. There are a lot of opportunities for people to get beat up by senior management. They are just numerous, and there's no problem having one of those made available to you. There aren't very many opportunities for people to present things they did well, and this isn't necessarily a part of their job. So this is over and beyond what they are required to do as a part of their job. And it shows their creativity, it shows their understanding of the business, shows their willingness to assist the business and look out for the best interests of the business in a creative and practical way. And so giving them that opportunity to display that work in front of senior management and tell them how this has helped business is a very powerful tool. It also means it's fair game if you fail to respond, that I can't also pull your butt up in front of the same group and say, and now we have one that hasn't responded. And then senior management can say, and why haven't you responded? And it's not you to whom they are responding. So it can be very powerful as a part of your corrective action system to have those escalation procedures. It can also be very powerful to have those reward procedures where you're recognizing the power of what they have done as they have resolved situations. So I encourage companies to think about that or try that, because having an opportunity to be recognized by management for something good, there's just not a whole lot of opportunities for that created, and it will help your system over time. It will give the management a better understanding of what you do and how you do it, and it will give people a willingness to want to help you, which can be extremely valuable as you are progressing.
It is one of the places that auditors go for kind of a rapid check of the pulse of the management system. So if all of the corrective actions are 6 months old or 9 months old before they get resolved, that's a symptom of some other things. Likewise, if they all got resolved the week before the auditor showed up, some were 2 weeks old and some were 2 years old, you know, that's another indication of something. So they will look at this closely to try and
You hand it
how
to me and it's
effectively
still
you're managing.
warm off the printer, and all the dates are identical. This is usually not a good sign. Okay? The same name is on every form.
Yeah.
That's also not usually a good sign for a healthy corrective action system. So looking at whether or not the responses are effective, that's some of what we're talking about. How do you know if it's effective? Well, as an auditor, we look to see, are there any repeats? Remember, we said this is typically electronic. It's very easy to say, can you go in and pull up for me a list of topics for all the corrective actions you've done in the past year? And they usually can do it. And you can scroll through the list and say, oh, I see 5 where the shipping area has had issues with the back docks being open and letting all the heat out, and for the back docks being open and letting all the cold air out. Have you, I see that you've got 3 or 4 findings on it this summer. Can you pull up a month in July or June? See, there's a couple where the warehouse has the back dock open. What have you done across these several instances to resolve this? Because it appears like this is a repetitive problem across season and across different months and different auditors. It does not appear your solutions have been effective across the time frame that we're looking at. That can be a very interesting question for them to answer. But we do pull up the list of corrective actions. We may ask for that in advance on occasion, and we look to see that those have indeed been addressed. We're definitely going to look to see that all the nonconformities that were issued by the certification body or verification body are in the corrective action system and have been addressed. That's definitely going to be done. But we look for repeats. The next place that this goes is management review. So in management review, there's a couple of topics that happen there. One is the status of audits, and another is the status of corrective and preventive action. So what we're looking for is not that you tortured your management team by going over every audit result and every corrective and preventive action ever written, and you keep them there until the cows come home. This is not the goal. But rather that you are making them aware of, yes, we are still doing audits, here's our schedule. By the way, we're training 2 new people in the next quarter, so we expect the load on Joe to get better because we're bringing on Jane and Susie, and we expect this to level out a bit. We've had 22 corrective actions. Of those, 80% have been responded to within the required 30 days. The ones that have not have all been in the warehouse. That kind of thing. So you're looking at high-level summary kind of information. If, however, there is something that you need resources for, we haven't been able to schedule any of our internal auditors. We would like to get resources to get this outsourced. That's what management review is for. So it's about telling them not only the status of the system, but what you need. And they'll look at, this is, like I said, a great place to bring in people who've done a really good job in corrective action and highlight what they did and have them present that success story to management. This is supposed to lead to continual improvement and changes. It does embed the Plan, Do, Check, Act piece of the process here. It is also a place that you should scan over before an audit and see if there are energy performance improvements in here that you didn't otherwise see. Because somebody may have replaced something, changed the order of something, updated a maintenance frequency, modified a maintenance program, etc. as a part of a corrective action. They may have increased the visibility of something. They may have added or trained personnel, all of which you can get improvements for either energy performance or the management system. And one of the things I strongly encourage you to do is create a bullet list for senior management. Here are the improvements, because an audit question that is always asked, what has improved since the last time I was here in your management system, and how has your energy performance improved since the last time I was here? So we ask 2 questions. We ask it in almost every group we see. We always ask senior management, we always ask the management rep, we always ask key people throughout the organization those 2 questions. It is asked a lot. So creating that bullet list, corrective action is a great place to get the improvements to the management system, because this is where they're going to train people, this is where they're going to update procedures, this is where you're going to get those pieces of information from. And I guarantee you're not going to remember what they did in November from back in January. Okay, so go back right before an audit, make yourself a bullet list, share it. I usually have the blue side and the green side. Management system and the energy performance. Here's your top 5 bullets. It's really helpful for them. Okay, so that's something to think about. Your role, you need to review the process. Make sure they understand the role of these processes in the organization. You also need to see that they're meeting the requirements of the system, especially if they've never had one of these systems before. Don't forget SEP requires a procedure. You need to make sure that they have some skill sets in root cause. That is a very common failure of this particular part of the standard. People just assume if they have a job, they know how to do root cause. No, they know how to get to work. Doesn't mean they know how to solve problems. Okay? Root cause doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very, very simple. 5 Whys is a good example. It's very effective. It works. It's not complicated, and a lot of people can do it. But don't assume people know these techniques or have ever used these techniques. Another thing that you want to do is make sure you have records. This is a place where auditors love records. So make sure you know where they are. People know how to access them. They know how they're named. They can pull them up from, oh, this group. Can you show me a corrective action that's been done in the warehouse on this topic? Can you show me a corrective action shows an improvement in the management system? Can you show me a corrective action that comes from an internal audit? It's all about indexing or having the paper there that you can scroll through quickly and pull examples of. But one way or the other, you got to be able to pull the records.
So you need a procedure and you want all of the records.
We always want all the records.
Right.
But in this case, we actually also want a procedure.
Also want a procedure. There's only
Yeah.
2 procedures needed
And
for,
50.
Yeah.
And then 2 additional in SEP.
Got it. Okay.
And then a boatload of records.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, don't forget this is a great place to harvest improvements. You make your little lists.
I would say one thing, I find a lot of organizations, and the corrective action just becomes, the goal is to complete the corrective action. So we have all these completed corrective actions. And in the end, that's not really the intent of corrective action. The intent of corrective action is to find the root cause and eliminate the root cause. And that continual improvement. But if people get in the practice of just, I need to close this form out, we have 30 days to do it, so, they don't.
Counseled employee.
Right.
That's why I encourage you to put the value of it, the value of fixing this on the form. And it's not on the example we showed you. It's not very common for people to actually follow through and do that. But it is a very value-added way to start thinking about it, because then if you're putting down the value of the solution, it means you didn't just say, stop doing that. You actually tried to figure it out and tried to resolve it. I know we have given you a lot of stuff over the last 4 days. So I know one thing we have for all of you is letters of. What happens next? If you want to get the CP certificate, you would now contact Melody McElwee and you would ask her to arrange for you an exam on the CPE&MS exam. She would then find a test center near your location. We have these test centers all over the U.S. as well as overseas. And you would go and take the exam. The exam is based on that list of things that's covered, that's on the JTA, and that's actually on the INNP website. Let me show you that. Find it. Okay, so here's INNP, it's just INNP.org. And you can find out all kinds of things, like how do you get certified? And you can say, okay, I want to be certified as a CPE&MS. It tells you, here's what you need to do. It tells you what the fees are. It tells you how to get certified, and it will walk you through the process as you follow through on their various pieces. So here's the one that tells you all the steps to follow under application process, and it tells you all the different things that you need to do. If you get lost in all of this, you can always contact Melody. And if you just email her, she will respond fairly quickly to you, and she will help you walk through all of the parts and pieces to this. But basically, you're going to submit an application. Don't worry if you don't understand it. They will send you back information and say, hey, this is great, but we need this as well, or we need this. And once they have a final approval of your application, then Melody will work with you to set a date that works for you in a place near where you are for business or near where you live for convenience as a test center, and you go to the test center and you take the exam. CPENMS exam is in 2 parts. It's a core and then an industrial exam. So it has 2 parts. You can choose to take both parts in one day, or you can actually choose to take them on different time frames. It's perfectly okay. I believe they give you a total of 8 hours for the 2 parts, with the first one being longer, 6 hours, and the second one being shorter, about 2 hours. I don't think the first one takes 6 hours, so I think you'll finish before then. There's no penalty for finishing early. And then the second one, I think they give you about 2 hours, and I don't remember it taking 2 hours either. I don't remember them taking the full time. Once you've taken the exam, shortly thereafter, you usually get a letter and a call from Melody giving you the information on the results, and then they will send you a certificate in the mail if you pass. If you don't pass, they'll send you information on which parts of the exams you did well in, which parts you did not, and some suggestions for what you might want to study.
Go to that exam prep link, it's got the JTA stuff on it.
Yeah. Fine, exam prep.
Click on the CPENMS at the top, and then over on the right, from the menu that pops up, come over one. Just hover, see the bottom one on the right there?
Oh, yeah.
There. If you scroll down, you'll see
This gives you, this is the JTA right here. These are the topics. Right here. So it gives you all of them. As we did mention yesterday, the requirements are changing, so there will be a new exam on the new requirements, and we're doing a beta on that in November, last I heard, November-ish. I'll use November-ish. And then sometime after first quarter of next year, there'll be a bridge exam for 2012 to 2016. The beta exam does have specific advantages. One, in terms of pricing, and 2, it gets you all the credentials as soon as possible, which is nice. In addition to this class, there are 2 others. One is called SEP Lead Auditor, or SEPLA. That is an online course, and it has an exam as well. It's not a very long exam. I don't remember it being, maybe an hour? It's a very short exam, but it's an online kind of review. It goes more into 50,028 and more into how to plan audits and how you manage auditors and that kind of thing. And then we have SEP PV, or Performance Verifier. That's the person in the audit who is responsible for verifying the performance improvement that was achieved. So they're going to do a lot of the evaluation of the model. There is a class for that, and there is an exam for that one as well. I do not recall how long that exam is. Do you remember? 3, 4?
Yeah, about 3 hours,
I think that's a 3 or 4 hour exam.
one section.
Yeah. In addition to that, there's also a international ISO 50001 lead auditor course. It's called EPI Lead Auditor. It is for 50,001, so it's focused on that, and it has an exam, accredited exam as well. That one is 2 hours, and it was not a bad exam at all. It was pretty easy. All of those can be done in any combination that you want to sit for.
I have a certification question, and maybe it applies to Angie as well. I knew it was coming to this class, and I think right before I left last week, Paul asked me, so you're taking the exam? And I said, no, and the reason I wasn't is because I looked through this website just briefly. And it mentioned in addition to, or whatever the requirements are, there's an experience requirement. And in my case, I think it would be like 3 or 4 years. And while I've done some work in this area as a consultant over the last few years, I didn't feel like that added up to what they're talking about. But Paul's question back to me was like, well, what did they say when you applied? Because there's an application you send me, some kind of, I was like, I didn't send them the application. But he seemed to think that they will work with you on a case-by-case basis, I guess, to see.
They work with every application individually. And they will work with you to determine what you need or what additional information they need to make the decision. But I won't say they approve every application, because I know they don't.
Sure.
They don't.
They
And
don't.
I mean, and I don't really want to get the credential if I'm not legitimately experienced for it. So, I don't want to imply something that I'm not.
We do have some staff who, I know Randy is CP, I'm a CP. Randy, of course, is a PV in LA. We hold a variety of credentials, but we do have staff, for example, and work with staff. There's a gentleman we work with who's out of Lawrence, Berkeley, and he would never qualify to get the credential. But in terms of understanding and knowing the material, oh yeah. But the experience requirements is actually where he doesn't have the experience to meet. So, although it is a sliding scale based on your education, it is one where they do ask for more detail. And they may ask for detail like 3 times, and then they may just finally come back and say, well, we're not really able to accept this, we recommend this. Or they may come back and say, well, this in combination with these other things, we think do give you the experience that you need.
It is a committee, it's not a single person that's deciding to
Yeah.
say that.
And that's why sometimes they come back 2 or 3 times, because different members of the committee might, when they meet, might say, yeah, but I think this means this, and I think this means this, and I think this and this and this make that. And they all have slightly different viewpoints. So that's why you may get 2 or 3 inquiries about additional information or what something means. But if you think you're close or somebody thinks you are close, you can definitely submit an application and they'll go through it. And they'll come back and say one way or the other what they think.
And the normal rule would be they would prefer to pre-qualify you for the certification before you take the exam.
Of course, yeah.
They won't set a seat
Yeah,
unless
I
your
agree.
application is approved.
Yeah, okay.
But the handbook actually said it the other way.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, but
Yes.
they won't.
Yeah, they won't do that, yeah. I
Part
talked to
of me
them.
now is concerned with, okay, well, by the time I go through this process, that's not true. I mean, normally a situation like I've taken this whole class, I'd be like, yeah, I want to do it as soon as possible, it's all fresh in my mind.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
At least I get to think about a lot of this stuff as part of my regular job, so that's
Yeah.
fine. But ordinarily, I'd be like, no, I better get to it soon or I won't pass.
Well, we have had candidates who have taken the test more than once. I had a CP class last year, and there was a young lady in there who had taken the test 3 times. And then she decided to come take the class. You don't have to take the class to take the test.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement. She did better after she took the class.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So I thought that was interesting. But, so I know there are people who take it more than once. She was sharing her
Well,
experience.
I don't
You
know
should
if
fill out
it's
the
totally-
value of the corrective action she took.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that it's totally unbiased because most of the people taking the class, that's a subset of the population anyway, but it's a pretty good success rate for this class. It's between 80 and 90% on the first exam. Hopefully you're fairly well equipped to do it.
Can we, by chance, get copies of any updated resources after
I will ask.
you update this class for the new
You can
standard?
definitely get the MMV protocol, the subcert, and the scorecard.
Okay,
Those are not a problem to get.
Okay.
The standards are, we don't even, I mean, we wrote them, and we don't even sell them, so I can't even get them.
yeah,
Those are bought directly from ANSI.
sure.
But yeah, the other documents will be available on the SEP website. They are
Okay.
still designing how they're gonna differentiate between the 2012 and the 2016 program. So I don't know exactly where they're gonna be or exactly how that's gonna look. I know they're in the process of doing that. But those will be available. 21 is now approved, and that means all the normative references associated with it have been approved. I know 21 has been reformatted and is now ready to go to ANSI for sale. The normative references, I think, are currently being formatted for that, for loading. 28 is being submitted tomorrow for approval, so I know it will be done by November. So I don't know if they're going to load them all in November, or if they're going to load part now and part then.
We're not gonna try to distribute those through.
You could need that for the beta exam.
They've been provided already to IMAP for that purpose, yes.
I was even thinking, like, you know, how awesome it is to have copies of all these modules and whatever else just to study from.
Yeah.
Or would I have to, like,
The modules
retake?
will be the modules will be very similar. I'm not sure if there's an update course. I've heard that there is. I've also heard nothing else. So I don't
Oh,
know,
okay.
but I believe there's an update course. I'm way out on the end of a limb there. I'm not entirely
Okay.
sure what that process is. You might know more.
Yeah.
I actually don't know yet.
I've been asked when it's going to be ready, which kind of gives me the impression I'm supposed to be doing something.
Okay.
but I'm not entirely positive what that is. So
Okay.
it could be my fault. I don't know. Probably. So I will, we'll certainly let you know when we have that information. I know they were also talking about doing some webinars for people who've taken like CP classes recently who wanted to hear the updates.
Oh,
I
perfect.
know there were some webinars being discussed.
Okay.
So I believe that's definitely in the works as well.
Do you know what, is it something where I should just kind of, will there be a distribution list, or is it something where I should just keep my eye on the Department of Energy website or Georgia Tech website just to?
Do not keep your eye on the Department of Energy website. I've just learned recently what I have to go through in web governance to get things on the website, so it will not be timely.
Okay.
I'll tell you that much.
All right.
But I'll give you my card and contact me if there's a specific question of something. Hey, why isn't that there? And I'll tell you why.
Or-
There's a mailing list,
Yeah.
kind of the SDP MNV community that's folks at the labs that worked on developing the protocol, Georgia Tech, and then people in the audit community that have to audit the PB. And we have these webinars from time to time where we'll actually go over case studies of how people did the model,
Okay.
how the audit was done, that kind of stuff. The webinars that have been done are on the website. I'm not sure, I don't think signing up for this class gets you on that mailing list,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
but I think you can sign up for it.
Oh,
Um,
oh, I got it.
I can try to follow up and make sure that your email gets on there. And then you did notice that there were pretty much anything about SCP or, they would send out to that list.
Okay.
Like they've been looking for pilot
Three copies,
companies
right? Three stuff.
to put them on the video.
Yeah.
Companies saying, this is what we're looking for, we want you to try out that you got. But I don't know if you can, I don't know how to sign up for that.
That list is actually one of the lists I created when I created it for the CPMS list.
Yeah.
So, I'll send emails out. There's another one I have to find the other list. When I find the other list,
Thank you, Randy.
I'm working on getting it updated.
I think you got my email already.
Of course. You didn't get one of those fancy forms, do you?
Did you lose mine? Do you need another one?
Nope, I got it right here. Thank you.
This is your guys' copy.
Thank you.
Yeah, there was
Everything else I probably.
50,021, yeah.
Yeah, I got on this one. Get Jennifer's.
Give you mine too, just in case you
Okay,
think of something that might be helpful, or if I can help at all.
I think you guys will have fun with it when you, get a chance to go and enjoy. You should take all these out.
You need you to sign the checkout sheet so that you bring me up over it.
We take pizza for.
Am I, oh, and receipt and receipt.
Yeah, you can do both. I didn't have to sign it, we checked it out.
Okay, so we need to initial for Jennifer.
Administrative folks get the paperwork and they go, how come they can't get that? signed?"
Records, I
Right.
I
understand.
have records right here. You got another record?
Records.
All right, this one is Jennifer. I'm signing for
I
Jennifer.
don't have that card to give you, but I can show.
I'm sure we'll.
Thank you. I know where you're at. I'll get down to Oak Ridge one of these days.
Yeah. Probably we see you, we see you very often.
I don't know, no,
Here's
it's,
the number 5.
I mean, I don't have a direct linkage with Better Plans program, it's just when there's these overlap.
But I think we probably is going to get involved in energy.
I'm not gonna tell.
As well.
I have a
So
signature.
is your core program?
Not for that one.
ACP?
Oh, not for that.
Not for
You have an
50,000.
idea what?
I have this.
Red.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm essentially
Is it energy?
I didn't.
You have a card?
Yeah.
groomed to be Paul Shine's backup for everything SEP and all that. 'cause, you know, one of these days it's gonna work.
My wife sent me
No,
a text,
he
said
still
the traffic
focuses
is up
on all
on
that.
this chair.
A lot of this goes way over my head.
So what did you get a degree at?
The University
Dublin's
of
about the first place to let
Minnesota.
them get off the interstate.
Yeah. Have you been there?
No, actually, I had a high school friend, she actually went to that university. I don't know. But yeah, but I know that
Yeah, I gotta
university
give
is
a, I gotta give an update.
University is a very good school.
Yeah, it is a good school, yeah.
What degree you get?
The traffic.
I
You
did
have an idea
civil
of when it's
engineering.
going?
Well, we'll be dead
With
by
environmental.
nine.
Oh, I tell you.
Yeah, it's still.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
It might be hard.
Okay, you have a signature bag?
Yeah, thank you. It was really great meeting you.
Okay, me too.
Yeah.
Photo op with
My son is a homeowner, so hopefully he's got a.
So, Dan, please email me
Yes,
the title.
I have that
and,
ready to go.
And I learned a lot
We'll
from
spend
this class.
I'm
You know,
glad.
I think, passing the exam should be, it's just
working with
Tom
building
said,
technologies.
okay, he got an email from, Jay, said, okay, I'll have
To figure out who those
CP
40,
certified.
50
And he said, oh, you guys
organizations
need to go
are.
to class. I said, cool.
And
But I
doing
learned
that,
way more
the
than
idea
just,
is
just the
you wanna
exam.
have
I think I don't know all about the,
version of eGuide,
Yeah.
version
It's
of
very
the
valuable
NDI
for that.
tool.
I think it would help
Online to show
the
them
Better
the
Plans program for the towns to
And
come through here
not
just to
only that, have
understand,
success stories.
one,
Like
if the
done
Better
for
Plans
SAP and others to say,
company
here's-
wanted to move
here's
towards
the benefit.
SAP,
So
you could kind of coach
that's what,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
understand what
in
they
addition
need
to
to
getting
do.
tools
Two,
done by the end of this year.
you've kind of been given that regression
We're already
tool
working
as
on
a,
outreach plans to figure out, okay.
as a way to do the
particular
EMPI.
Industry association.
I don't know how much
Talk to.
understanding you really got,
Logical.
behind it.
Here's,
I guess
we also have
our
some
role
longer
is
range
supposed to
plans about
help
how
us to
we,
use it for, but
if
the
it
thing is,
doesn't want-
I have very
Right,
limited experience on that.
right.
But you guys have played with that for,
Used to
you
do
know,
it.
Right.
for a long
Like if
time.
they had got
I worked with
credit,
different
Lots of
industries.
scenarios.
Yeah, so it's very valuable.
carbon disclosure.
So emails are
There's a
way.
way
Yeah,
to
yeah,
help
if I have
put
questions,
that
I'll
down, try to
probably
share
guys.
the index. I mean, we got a lot of those ideas in mind in terms of, there's the tools, there's the outreach, but then it's all leading up to the kickoff to this 2-year pilot program.
So like May 17th to.
You've got it sometime that week, yes. Better Building Summit.
If you look, think of the, my better class partner being interested in part of it. To see how it's done out.
Yeah.
Well, my son is moving in.
All right.
Yep.
Yep. So, Pete, very nice to meet you. I think we are going to work together very often in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, I think
I
we
look
have
forward to it.
bumped into each other a couple of times at like summits. I've definitely seen you before, but never got the chance to.
Never had no idea who I was. but-
Yeah, I think that
I'm that new guy that keeps following around Paul. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Oh, really?
Me.
Because people are evacuating.
Yeah, I'm glad this finally happened, so. Now, a lot of those blank stares I have when we're in meetings, I won't have anymore because I
Because
learned
all the counties that
here.
are because are being evacuated. Dublin's like the first place.
So the somebody is gonna take care of that. Yeah.
And Angie, if you want to make comments on the draft of 2001 at DIS, I open it up publicly, I can make comments.
Yeah?
Just email me and let me know.
Do I seem opinionated or what?
No, I'm always looking for people to make comments,
Okay.
because we're always trying to get as many different stakeholders as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys want to make comments on it, you're welcome to. ISO Sooners go through stages where what's called committee draft. We're going to do one more committee draft, so in June, I'll be issuing the BIS. So it'll be after June, because it's not like next week.
Yeah.
It's out. But at that point, you could reopen it up for public comments. We'd be very happy to have more comments.
And you're definitely qualified to comment on it.
There we
Yeah.
go. Kind of know what I'm talking about, but not really.
Well, if you survive this week, you could, you have good context to make comments.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yes.
This is what I need. This is our copy of the
All right, Pete, I'm heading out.
Please be careful on your trip and travels, folks, as you head out for the.
Are you guys flying back to
No,
Knoxville?
we're not back. I'm not.
Yeah.
meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you. Yeah.
Hey, Wayne, Kieran, how far is Oak Ridge from Nashville? I forget.
From Nashville, it's almost similar.
Well, you're getting out a little bit ahead
How
of
much?
the curve,
Two
but
and a half to 3
with this coastal evacuation.
So it may or may not be worth me coming down.
Create a little bit of a
I
swell.
have a really quick trip to Nashville, and I'm wondering,
Yeah,
should I just make it a longer trip
I
and try to
live
do
2
other
hours
stuff
from
in
the
Tennessee?
coast.
So
My
I'll
wife's
think
in
about it.
traffic in our town.
So that'll be middle of November.
So, I hadn't looked out the window.
You can make comments on 2001 too, you know.
I know I can. I try not to.
Well, it's looking pretty good out there right now, so you should be okay.
This is like the first time I looked outside and it is moving in this southbound direction.
Randy, did you get your stick? I
Yes.
don't see it.
I'm still holding out hope that somehow Delta would let me change my flight for free. They've taken apparently that functionality out of the app. Because
Yeah.
I used to do it and I
But
can't
if you
do
go,
it now.
when you go to the
I know,
airport,
that's why I'm gonna do that next.
and you ask at the desk, they usually can do it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
That's-
Appreciate your
There's only
questions.
one ticket type
Very
they won't
helpful.
do that.
Yeah,
for.
it was helpful.
So-
Oh, okay. Well, that's my next plan of attack.
Participation is- Anything else if we can help out or
Sure,
answer any
sure,
questions?
yeah.
It's one of my side missions in life is to help people understand that model and how to use it, so you guys are in a great position
And he does a great job on
Yeah.
that.
to do that, so.
We have a lot of discussion around it. So like,
I proposed a topic, I don't know that it get chosen, to look at the impact of how you choose that production variable. Does it matter? You know, because a lot of people, where they have this odd mix of outputs, they'll choose something like labor hours.
right,
It's
right.
using a surrogate,
You're
does
always
that give
entertaining.
you the same kind of results and models it would if you were actually measuring what the direct output was
Right,
in
right.
some set or subset?
And yeah, if you're really work with interested in the
I'll send an email out
publishing
later
stuff,
tonight, but I'll also want to see if people can actually do it. One of them is really for
Yeah.
CDMs, like that's one.
Okay.
data, a good place to,
That's one of
I'm pretty sure.
the sectors, what kind of.
Good luck. Y'all have safe travels.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you so much,
Pete?
Randy. Appreciate it.
So nice to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Enjoyed having you. I just appreciate your, we don't get many folks out of the DC office.
We don't have a whole lot of folks.
Well, I know, but just the fact that you came is encouraging to me that you guys are willing to
I need to
walk the
know-
walk and not just talk the talk.
And another one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm just a little annoyed my boss. It's like,
So if you're in
you should
plan.
have had me come do this like
Well, if you're in plan,
immediately
you
when I started.
assets.
Why?
Right.
Why did I not, everyone?
Well, it just gives you context for understanding a lot of
Exactly.
what gets discussed. If nothing else, it kind of helps you
Yeah.
catch up
Yeah.
really fast, so.
I know. I have no idea. I mean, I've been in too many conversations where it was expected I had this knowledge and I didn't.
Yeah.
And
Well-
that's just not the way to be effective. So,
And it's called
enough of my
OTJ, I mean OJT.
Yes.
Acronym.
on the job training. When was the last time, by the way, that you did have this training here? 'Cause the
June
Okay,
was the
well,
last offer.
I could see why. I mean, that June was chaotic. That was right when I was
So
starting.
basically, it's 4 times a year,
Oh, okay.
3 maybe the spring, summer and fall. We don't probably do it in the winter. Lead auditor, we do a couple of times.
That's what threw me, because I didn't see anything in the winter, and so I started thinking, oh, it's like every